Empire built on addiction. There are drug dynasties you listen about, and the drug dynasties you never meant to be to know. In the United States, the Sackler family became infamous for OxyContin, a pharmaceutical opioid that devastated communities, killing hundreds of thousands of people and costing one family more than $20 billion before lawsuits even began. But a century before Purdue Pharma existed, before taking OxyContin, before the term Big Pharma came into being, there's another family too. A dynasty that didn't just profit from addiction. They industrialized it. A family that does not aim at one country, but at two complete civilizations. A family that did not go out in disgrace, but did go out with knighthood, titles, monuments, and a permanent place in the upper echelons of the British Empire. This is not a story taught in school. This is the story buried in the libraries that bear their names, engraved into the pier they sponsored, engraved on the stone tablets of hospitals that still exist. This is the story of the Sassoon family, the drug lords who built modern Mumbai, destroyed the economy of imperial China, and become global philanthropists whose descendants are hailed as heroes. And the most worrying part? The strategies they invented are being reused today in labs, boardrooms, and pharmaceutical companies that claim to help people. Addiction is always a problem. At first, the Sassoon family simply industrialized it. The problem of empire, tea, silk, and silver. To understand why the Sassoons became one of the most powerful drug empires in history, first you must understand the crisis that almost brought down the British Empire. In the early 1800s, Britain was obsessed with China. Tea, silk, porcelain. The goods that shaped the lifestyle of the British upper class and ultimately the lifestyle of every British household. There's just one problem. China doesn't want anything British made. Len on, not interested. British machinery? Low. Made in England? Unnecessary. The Qing Empire regarded Britain as nothing more than a self-righteous barbarian island. So when British merchants came begging for tea, China made a request. Okay, pay in silver. And so the silver flowed out of British coffers and into Chinese hands ship by ship. Millions of pounds of silver every year. The loss of wealth was so severe that London economists warned of a currency collapse. This is an existential crisis. If silver continues to flow out of the empire, the British financial system will collapse, the pound will weaken, credit markets will freeze, empires can fall. And that's when Britain made a dark decision. Economically wonderful, but morally terrible, that it rewrote world history, turned India into a drug factory, Chinese addicts, reversed the flow of silver. The East India Company was the first drug organization. By the 1830s, the British East India Company was no longer a business. It is a quasi-sovereign state, private army, private court, its own laws, separate tax system, own currency, and a territory larger than the whole of Europe. It is the world's first multinational corporation with a military force. And it discovered the perfect business model. Growing opium in India, smuggling it to China, getting silver, buying tea, selling tea in England, making a profit at every step. When David Sassoon came to Bombay, the East India Company produced more than 500 tons of opium each year. A staggering 14% of the colony's revenue came from drugs, roads, school office, military salary. All paid for in part with drugs. The British Empire was funded by drug addiction. And David Sassoon saw the problem for what it really is. A criminal organization masked under the banner of an empire. A product protected by law and in limitless demand. David Sassoon, the rugged merchant, saw the future. In 1832, David Sassoon and his family fled Baghdad. They are not rich. They have no power. They are refugees fleeing persecution. But David had three assets more valuable than money. 1. Middle Eastern Merchant Network. A network of Jewish merchant families, bankers, and merchants stretched from Persia to the Mediterranean. Not business partners, but kinship, built on blood, faith, and trust. 2. Political instinct. His father had served as chief treasurer of Baghdad, teaching him how to read power, how to win favor, how to become indispensable to the ruler. 3. Perfect timing. He arrived just as Britain was turning India into a drug plantation. Most refugees arrived late to the crisis. David Sassoon came at a time when an empire needed someone like him. He didn't just want to deal in drugs, he wants to own it. from middleman to king of the Sassoon machine. Most merchants bought opium at auction, shipped it to China, and hoped it arrived safely, not the Sassoons. They built a vertically integrated drug empire, funding for farmers, loans for opium growers, own warehouse, control storage and quality, operate your own ship, no middleman, run your own insurance company at your own risk, port agency hire, multilingual network from Bombay to Canton, linked with the British government, the main component. They understand one truth: power protects profit. Profit expands power. The British not only tolerated the Sassoon family, they depended on them. When the empire needed to borrow money, Sassoons paid. When the empire needed logistics, Sassoons was founded. When empire needed denial, Sassoons handled the dirty work. They become indispensable, and inevitability is the currency of empires. By the 1840s, Sassoon ships were transporting tens of thousands of barrels of opium each year. By the 1850s, over 7 million pounds of narcotics were being smuggled each year. China's collapse, an economy dying in tobacco. Inside China, the devastation is unfolding in real time. Opium dens sprang up throughout the coastal cities. Workers leave the farm because of addiction. The fathers sold their properties to make a living. Children starve as wages evaporate. Businesses fail. Productivity falls. Chinese silver had been accumulating for centuries. The very silver that England desperately needed was now flooding out of the country and into the Sassoon family's coffers. China was not defeated by military force. China is being beaten by accountants. The one who tried to prevent it, Lin Zexu. In 1839, the Qing dynasty appointed one of its most strict and principled officials, Lam Trak II. His mission: to destroy the opium trade. He occupied the warehouses. He confiscated thousands of barrels of opium. He publicly destroyed the drugs, dumping the lime-laced mixture into the sea. And he wrote a moral appeal to Britain that should be remembered alongside the greatest indictments in history. Why sell to China? What do you forbid your people to consume? Why poison families abroad? To protect your property at home? Why are strict controls needed in the UK, while encouraging drug addiction in China? Your answer? No debate. Not a negotiation. War. The drug wars. When profit becomes rule. The first Opium War, 1839-1842, was not a war for property. There has been debate about the right to continue selling drugs for money. British artillery destroyed the Chinese fleet. Steamships were more capable than ancient sailing ships. The coastal forts fell one by one. How did it go? The Treaty of Nanking was one of the most brutal treaties ever signed. China must compensate. China must open more seaports. China must cede Hong Kong. British merchants were exempt from Chinese law. Illicit drugs don't have to be. He created a permanent tunnel into China. What about the Sassoon family? They were the first to have access to every new port. More ports, more opium, more silver, more expansion. To the rise of a drug crime, the Second Porno War. When Britain doubled, China does not surrender quietly. Even after the humiliation of the Treaty of Nanking, Chinese officials continued to try to suppress the opium trade. They arrested the smugglers. They attempted to confiscate the shipments. They tried to restrict British access. But every effort to protect his country, seen as a threat to the British business model. And so, in 1856, the British Empire was back in full force. This time they brought an ally, France, also eager to gain a share of the Chinese market. British and French troops advanced inland. Royal buildings were burned, the palace was ransacked, and captured Beijing. The culmination of the invasion was the destruction of the old Summer Palace, a masterpiece of Chinese architecture, art, and history. The priceless relic was taken away, artwork melted, broken, stolen, a cultural massacre disguised as commercial pressure. And when China was forced to sign new treaties, the Treaty of Tianjin and the Convention of Beijing, the results were clear. Opium is now explicitly legalized. No tolerance, no smuggling, no hiding. Legal, a banned substance in the UK. Now blessed, protected, and institutionalized when sold to China. And no one benefits more from this bureaucracy than Sassoons. Suggested image number 5, panoramic view of British and French troops marching towards Beijing, contrasted with close-up of treaty signatures on parchment. An opium chest lies ominously in the foreground, the boom of the Sassoon Empire. With China forced to open up and opium legalized, the Sassoon family entered its golden age. Every year, the amount of goods they transport is growing. 40,000 chests, 50,000 chests, 59,000 chests. More than 7 million pounds of refined opium are imported into China annually. But the real genius of the Sassoons is not volume, it is strategy. They have diversified. They took the profits from opium and bought cotton mill tea plantation, silk export banking activities, real estate from Mumbai to Shanghai shipping fleet, telegraph lines, railway shares. Just as Rockefeller used oil money to build Standard Oil, the Sassoon family used drug money to build a business empire across Asia, and each new investment contributes to obscuring the truth about the source of the capital, the art of laundry of a dynasty. This is where the Sassoons really outshine the Sacklers. Today, the Sackler name is slowly disappearing from museum grounds. The Louvre has removed it, the Tate has removed it, the Met has removed it. But the Sassoon family did the opposite. They have built so many institutions, have donated so generously, and have attached their names to so many pillars of society that criticizing them has become socially unacceptable. They built synagogues, hospitals, libraries, reading rooms, schools, docks, workers' housing, charities. They received British knighthood, ceremonial functions, honorary title, civic honor, direct relations with colonial governors. David Sassoon did not run away from imperial power. He integrated into it. And as the buildings grew, so did the reputation, from opium dealer to pillar of Bombay society as benefactor of the empire. This is not a charity. This is the famous armor, the same strategy the Sackler family used 150 years later, but executed with much greater precision. The human cost of China's collapse in slow motion. While the Sassoon family built monuments, China is falling apart. Entire provinces saw addiction rates spike to catastrophic levels. Workers abandoned the farms that fed their families. Craftsmen stopped producing goods. National spirit disintegrated. Opium smoke spread over the cities like a fog of despair. A generation of young people falling into addiction. Women sold their property, then their children, then themselves to support their husbands. Villages collapsed, businesses died, agricultural productivity fell, crime soared. And the silver Britain needs is flowing out of China at a record pace. China's tax base has been shrinking. The country's army is weakened. Its economy is weakened. The Opium War was not a conflict. It is an economic strategy. A hostile invasion aimed at the future of a civilization, and David Sassoon is one of the company's major shareholders. Rise with the Sassoon family empire to become royal in everything but name. The British Empire rewarded useful partners, and the Sassoon family was very helpful. In 1853, David Sassoon was appointed Commissioner of Bombay, a title that was symbolic but carried immense power. His son Abdallah, renamed Albert, went even further. Knight Commander of the Order of the Star of India, first Jew to be granted freedom of the City of London, a close collaborator with British officials in trade and colonial administration. Think about it. A wealthy family from China is addicted to drugs, was raised to the highest position in British society. The Rothschilds, Europe's legendary banking dynasty, never received some of the honors accorded the Sassoons. That's how deeply intertwined their addiction to money was with their empire building. The Sassoon family did not only benefit from the empire, they become part of the aristocracy, the collapse of China's economy, and the seeds of revolution. By the end of the 19th century, the damage was irreparable. China was weakened, divided, and demoralized, its government struggling to collect taxes, as addiction killed productivity and depleted silver reserves. This is not just an economic recession, it is political instability. Opium is not only poisonous to humans, it poisons organizations. When people lose confidence in their economy, they eventually lost faith in their ruler. The Opium Wars opened up more than just ports. They contributed to creating the conditions for the collapse of the Qing dynasty, the warlord era the Republican Revolution, and finally the rise of the Chinese Communist Party. History remembers emperors and generals. But what about the Sassoons? They helped rewrite the entire fate of a civilization. A big reversal. As China strikes back in 1949 after the victory of the Communist Party, China finally did what its emperors could never do. They confiscated all Sassoon's foreign assets, buildings, warehouses, banks, and real estate. Gone. Overnight. The family that helped flood China with drugs confiscated their entire Chinese empire by a government born of anti-colonial anger, fueled by memories of the Opium War. The Sassoon family fled to the Bahamas. Their Asian empire was gone. Their names have disappeared from Chinese history, except as symbols of foreign exploitation. The irony is cruel. The family that helped weaken China was destroyed by a China that no longer tolerated exploitation. Internal collapse, a great battle that lived its time, and then comes the final stage of the Sassoon story. Not war, not revolution, not moral awakening, poor management, greed, rotten from within. By the early 20th century, later generations of Sassoons lacked the vision and ruthlessness of David and Albert. The company stagnated, textile mills shut down, investments went bankrupt, management collapsed. By the 1980s, the remnants of the Sassoon business empire were declared incompetent by the British government. Think about it. The Rothschilds of the East, not a grand ending, but causes bureaucratic confusion. Their buildings still exist, their names still exist, their reputation remains intact. But what about the empire itself? Gone. Money is very addictive, but it never lasts. 3. Echoes in modern America. The shadow never dies. Drug empires rarely end when the money stops flowing. They end when story. The Sassoons disintegrated as a family empire, but their blueprint of industrializing addiction, extracting wealth, buying legitimacy, disappearing into respectability, did not disappear. It migrated. It evolved. And in the late 20th century, it found a new home in the United States under a new name, the Sackler family. The family behind OxyContin did not invent this tactic. They inherited it from the Sassoons, from the British colonies, from every empire that weaponized addiction for profit. But America perfected it, the Sacklers, modern-day drug dealers. When the Sacklers released OxyContin in the 1990s, they call it the miracle drug, safe, non-addictive, doctor-approved. But like opium in the 1800s, it was a lie masked by science. They urged doctors to prescribe it for everything: back pain, surgery, migraines, anxiety, even minor injuries. Patients trust their doctors. Doctors trust marketing. Regulators rely on pharmaceutical lobby groups. And once again, addiction became a profession. By the time America realized what had happened, more than 500,000 Americans were dead from opioids, including heroin, that patients use after their prescriptions run out. But what about the Sacklers? They walked away with more than $20 billion in wealth, a fortune far exceeding what the Sassoons would have made in today's dollars. They weren't arrested. They didn't lose everything. Their company filed for bankruptcy on their behalf. They settled lawsuits and kept most of their assets in offshore trusts. Like the Sassoon family, they covered their tracks with charity, museum wing, university faculties, research funding, charitable organizations, same prestigious armor, same moral cleansing. And today, their names are quietly being erased from museums, not because justice has come, but the scandal became too loud, just like the Sassoons. History doesn't repeat itself, but business models do. The bigger machine, when industry, government, and addiction work together. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The Sacklers did not act alone. Like the Sassoons, who had the backing of the British Empire, the Sacklers have a whole American system behind them. Distributors McKesson, AmerisourceBergen, Cardinal Health, transporting billions of pills into small towns. Pharmacies, prescription drugstores fill millions of prescriptions. Doctors get paid speaking fees, consulting fees, bonuses. Regulatory agencies. The FDA officials who approved opioids later left the government to join the pharmacy board. Politicians funded by the same lobbying group that protects the